Well, the internet's all up in arms about the RTX 5050 that is officially announced. You can find all the details for that on NVIDIA's website, at least the details that have been launched or expressed. And the official launch date for that is supposed to be the second half of July. So we're looking at about 2 to 3 weeks out. But there are some leaks out right now from a very credible leaker that has been pretty accurate over the last few generations of cards, talking about the Super series of cards that are getting ready to come out. So if you thought one new NVIDIA graphics card was going to be kind of like, when it comes to testing, we've got potentially 4 new cards coming out. Be Quiet is proud to introduce their all-new light mount and dark mount ultra-silent mechanical keyboards. Optimized for an ultra-quiet typing experience with factory-lubricated silent linear or tactile switches and 3 separate layers of sound dampening. Light mount features a full-size keyboard with an aluminum media wheel and 5 macro keys for streamlined access, while dark mount provides a more modular keyboard with hot-swappable numpad and media dock. Both feature sleek aesthetics, hot-swappable switches, ARGB lighting, and a magnetic palm rest, and are the perfect choice for those who demand comfort, customization, and silence. For more details, visit the sponsored link in the description below. Okay, so this is not the first time we've seen TI and Supers coexist. But what I have on the table right here is actually the entire 40 series lineup. So this is a 4060, 4060 Ti, 4070, 4070 Ti, no, 4070 Super, 4070 Ti, 4070 Ti Super, 4080, 4080 Super, and the 4090. They did not have a 4090 Ti or a 4090 Super, although they did in 30 series where they had a 3090 Ti. So as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards ranging between the 60 tier all the way up, or 60 class, all the way up to the 90 class card. That is not a lot of room between them for pricing and spacing in terms of feature sets and, like I said, pricing. The one thing missing from this stack is actually the 4050. That's because the 4050 was designed, they just never launched it in a desktop form. It only existed in gaming laptop form or mobile, which, as you know, the mobile numbers never mean anything compared to the desktop numbers. That's just arbitrary at this point. But now you're gonna see this exact stack just replace the 4 with a 5, and you're gonna have the 5050 down there giving what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards. Anyway, let's go and talk about some of the rumored specs. And because of those specs and given the pricing schemes of these cards, you can kind of get an idea of where they're gonna land. It's gonna be kind of interesting for NVIDIA to launch it during this time though, because right now, although the economy really sucks, and kind of because the economy sucks, these cards are readily available everywhere now. You can basically buy any of these cards for their manufacturer suggested retail price. So let me say real quick, something like a 5090 Astral having an MSRP of like $3,350, and that's what it costs, although it's an astronomical $1,300 premium over the Founders Edition 5090 at $2,000. That is what the manufacturer has set their price at. Now that's pre-tariff and everything else, although the tariffs haven't gone into full effect. There's a whole discussion to take place there. Their prices are inflated, but that is what the manufacturers have sort of just kind of relegated themselves to in pricing. Now, because they're readily available everywhere, in fact, right now, Micro Center, let's take a quick trip to Micro Center to see what current availability and pricing is. We're gonna use 5090 as an example because that was the card people were lining up for weeks, in fact, months on end to try and get their hands on one. To be honest, it was more or less people just trying to be able to flip them and scalp them, but whatever. So if we look at 5090s right now at Tustin, we have got 25 plus in stock of the, wow, oh, they must have got a shipment today because I looked yesterday and it was 16. It's now 25 plus in stock of the ROG Astral overclock card at $3,359. We've got 11 in stock of the PNY 5090 overclocked, which is the cheapest card available at $27.99. Realistically, knowing PNY, and there's nothing secret sauce or special really about their cards, they really should be the $2,000 price point as far as I'm concerned, but I digress. Gigabyte has 17 of the Aorus Master. That's the one behind me with the Vegas looking lights right there. The 5090 Supreme SoC, 12 in stock. We've got 19 in stock of the TUF 5090. We've got 25 plus in stock of the Gigabyte Gaming Overclock Triple Fan. We've got 25 plus in stock of the 5090 Vanguard. And we have got 25 plus in stock of the 5090 Ventus. Oh, I lied. It's $10 cheaper than the PNY card.
Dang, what a deal.
$10. Do you see what I'm saying? When you've got hundreds of these available, right? You kind of can't push the price as high as you want to as a manufacturer and retailer, I guess, because of the fact that there's choice. A few months ago, people bought whatever was in stock because that's all they could get their hands on. Let's take a look at pricing right now of something like the 5070 Ti. Let's just look at 5070 Ti, which we know is a terrible value. 25 plus in stock of the Ti Tough at $1,000. We got 25 plus in stock of the $850 PNY. 25 plus in stock of the $834 Ventus, 4 in stock of the Gaming Trio at $900. Let's see, 9 in stock of the Gigabyte Tough or Ti Gaming, Ti Prime, 1 in stock at $939. 14 in stock of $979. So anyway, the point is they're available. If you went to Micro Center, any Micro Center right now, you're just gonna see the shelves completely full of cards, and what you can't see in the back, in the warehouse, is a freaking skyscraper of graphics cards stacked, no joke, from floor to ceiling. We saw it. It's kind of scary. But my point is, with that many cards already sitting on shelves, launching 4 more cards seems kind of crazy to me. Although it's a model you've already seen, I don't understand the timing on this. Anyway, two major possibilities here. There's always more than 2, but 2 major possibilities here because of the economic slowdown and so much uncertainty regarding the tariffs and stuff. These manufacturers and these retailers and e-tailers are probably stockpiling all this stuff as soon as they can before any of that stuff goes into effect, because once it's already imported, the prices don't go up. It goes up at the import level when it happens. So they're trying to stockpile them as much as they can, which that's obviously a good move to do that because consumers know as the price goes up, you're gonna buy less. It's also possible because now we are 6 months into the launch of 50 series, enough people have finally gotten their hands on what they want that they have just decided, I don't need to buy anything. I already bought what I need to buy. And then maybe the third real option is because games sort of suck right now and there's nothing really new and innovative forcing people to have to upgrade, there's no mad rush to run out and buy anything in this mid to entry level price point and entry level tiering. With that out of the way, let's talk about the rumored specs of the new cards to come out. Keep in mind, please, these are a grain of salt, although these specs have ended up being pretty darn close in the past from this particular leaker. We'll start with the 5080 Super. The biggest change between these cards, and I will say this right now, if you're gonna run out and buy a new card and you're considering one of these new super variant cards that are gonna exist, if the pricing makes sense, and it should, they're kind of shoehorned into where the pricing models have to be because you can't have a 5070 Ti Super cost more than a 5080. Right, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. Although the 5070 Ti's already cost as much as the MSRP for a 5080, I guess anything's freaking possible. But backing up right here, these cards are rumored to have a lot more VRAM. And maybe that's because of the pushback that NVIDIA got. I doubt it. These cards have probably been in development long before we've been pushing back about needing more VRAM on these cards. Although everyone was pretty loud in the 40 series about needing more VRAM. The 5080 Super is rumored to have 24 gigabytes of GDDR7. Keep in mind, 24 gigabytes is what the 4090 has. 5090 now has 32 gigabytes, which would make sense that a 5080 Super could have 24 gigabytes versus the 5080 having 16. So it kind of makes a stopgap, or a jump, not just having a few more CUDA cores giving you a little bit more performance, but a lot more VRAM giving you a bigger frame buffer for modern games in the future, which we know we're going to use a lot more RAM and just smoother overall performance with that GDDR7, which is pretty fast. It's still rumored to be on a 256-bit bus with excess of 1 terabyte per second of bandwidth. So that's pretty cool. Rumored 10,752 CUDA cores and 415 watt TGP. So they're going to be increasing the TGP from about 380, depending on the card, anywhere between 360 to 380 to 415, which means now your 5080s might start melting connectors if they're not plugged in all the way, because that tends to be about the wattage zone where that is possible. It's the reason why you didn't see very many 4080s melting connectors versus 4090s, because the 4080s were a 350 to 360 watt card. It just wasn't enough power to do it. Now it might be able to potentially do it. Rumored to be anywhere between 10 to 15% faster than a 5080 simply because of that 24 gigabytes of frame buffer. So the more information you can store in RAM, that's a much faster way for the GPU to access it rather than having to offload it into system RAM, which is a much slower bandwidth or a much slower connection, if you will, to the system RAM. So you want to have as much of it stored on the GPU as possible, which is why we argue so much. Please give more VRAM in these graphics cards. 5070 Ti Super. Also, and this is one I'm having a hard time believing, but it's also rumored to have 24 gigabytes of the same GDDR7 at 28 gigabit per second speed, whereas I forgot to mention on the 5080 Super, it's rumored to be 32 gigabit per second speed. It's weird that that's the case though, considering they're both GDDR7, both 24 gigabytes of it, and both 256-bit bus rumored. So that's weird, but whatever, I digress. More power, more RAM, more performance. Now the question is, what's that gonna cost? If I just showed you the 5070 Ti at Micro Center is ranging anywhere from $840 up to $1,000, what is this gonna cost? It puts its MSRP higher than the MSRP of a 5080. So if you can find a Founders Edition card at $1,000, which is very difficult. They do exist. Best Buy does have them. Micro Center does get them occasionally. Fun fact, I was just at Micro Center and did that build where we did the 9070 XT. They didn't tell me this till after. They had two open box 5080 Founders Edition cards in the back that I did not know was there for $800. No damage, no scratches, no nothing. Someone bought it, took it, brought it back and said, I changed my mind. Literally an open box that was never really gamed on at $200, 20% price reduction from MSRP. That is a steal. And if I had realized that, I would have put a 5080 in that system that day. But I digress. In fact, don't forget when we took Phil and Nick Christmas shopping once as kind of a company thank you and gave them a shopping spree at Micro Center, during COVID, Nick actually found an RTX 3080 open box that had a couple of like nicks and scratches on it for, I think it was about $500. And this is during COVID when those were going for like $1,000. It's ridiculous. So again, make sure if you go to Micro Center, this isn't a Micro Center ad or anything, but make sure you ask them like, hey, any open box stuff that's not listed, because you're gonna have to ask for that sort of stuff. But my point is, would you actually spend, let's say $1,100 to $1,200 on a 5070 Ti Super, or would you rather spend $1,000 or so on an open box 5080? If those are your choices, I'm going with the 5080. Although the 5070 Ti Super has significantly more RAM at 24 gigabytes, if this is true, versus the 16 found on the 5080, 16 is still plenty, and the 5080 is faster and stronger. So I would do that personally. And that's why I get so kind of enraged about this stack and this lineup, is you're gonna have cards that cost more than the tier above it because of the custom model that it is, but you're not gonna get more performance for more money. So it becomes really hard to justify. And with all the different variants of their different cooler designs and stuff, you can have an MSI card that is like, you could have like 3 or 4 different MSI cards that make it more expensive than the next tier up, which just makes no sense whatsoever. But again, the likely, if you compare the specs, knowing they're on the same process and all that, you can expect probably a 10 to 20% improvement over the 4070 Ti Super with a 5070 Ti Super, which is really stupid because that's what the 5070 Ti should have been from the start, is that 10 to 20% improvement guaranteed that we were expecting. Not the anywhere between 5 to 10% depending on the tests that you run. So we spent months benchmarking these cards, and we found everything from as low as 3% uplift generational up to 30% uplift on something synthetic like TimeSpy or Steel Nomad or any of that stuff. So it's really hard to just even know what kind of uplift you're gonna get. All right, let's talk about the 5070 Super, rumored to have 18 gigabytes. That's a weird number, but 18 gigabytes of GDDR7, up from 12 gigabytes in the standard 4070. So we are comparing it to the previous gen, but 18 gigabytes of GDDR7, which is an interesting number, 6400 CUDA cores. Obviously, it's gonna have potentially more performance than the 4070 and 4070 Ti, which I hope to God it would. What performance we're gonna look at on that one, not entirely sure yet, haven't done the calculation on that. But you can expect anywhere between 10 to 15%, again, between the 4070 Ti and the 5070 Super. But this is where we have, if we're looking at like a Venn diagram, it's not 3, there's like 14 different circles overlapping, and that's what makes it so confusing for people. Obviously here, if these specs are true, the trend is more VRAM. At least more VRAM gives you a little bit of a justification for the increase in price. But again, now does that VRAM put it up through the ceiling into the next tier of the next level graphics card. So that's the decision that's gonna be hard to make, is like, do we now buy a 5070 Ti Super or a 5080 if you're shopping in that price point? I mean, we're talking, and they're selling all day long. When I'm at the store and I'm doing a video or whatever, I'm watching people cart after cart after cart just walk out with a card. It's like, so people are buying it. I know many of you watching right now are like, no one's buying these graphics cards. Absolutely not true. Watching them literally run a train through the cash registers to pay for these things. So they're there, people are buying them. The question is whether or not they're buying the right card. So once these cards officially launch, they're gonna launch staggered. They're probably not gonna all come out at the same time. They never do. There'll probably be a few weeks in between them. We will obviously benchmark them, and our chart will get more and more cluttered, which means I'm gonna have to start figuring out how to parse out the information in there so it makes sense to you guys. But just when I felt like the last 6 months of GPU testing and stuff finally came to an end, it's like, surprise! Oh, and the 5050, I don't expect NVIDIA to actually seed any of that to us. I'm sure there's not gonna be any sort of a Founders Edition card for that. As you can see right here, look, there's no Founders Edition card for the 4060, but there is a Founders Edition card for the 4060 Ti. Founders Edition card for the 4070, Founders Edition card for the 4070 Super, no Founders Edition card for the 4070 Ti Super, no Founders Edition card for the, actually no, is this 4070 Ti? Yeah, 4070 Ti, no Founders Edition card for the 4070 Ti Super, and then Founders for 4080, 40 Super, 4090. So sometimes NVIDIA just like relegates that to the board partners. They're like, here you go. And unfortunately, when there's no Founders Edition card, that's when it truly becomes the Wild West of pricing, because the Founders Edition card almost becomes like the anchor to try and keep prices from getting too far away. But when there's no Founders Edition card for something, you'll find that if you look at that spec card, you'll find some crazy fluctuations in prices because of the fact that that anchor doesn't exist. But as I started to say, they probably, I don't expect to get a card from NVIDIA per se for the RTX 5050 testing, so you may or may not see that on launch day for us. We may have to go out and buy it or source it from one of the board partners or something, which means we won't have it till after availability. Remember, NVIDIA is gonna control every single aspect of that. And if they're holding a grudge against us or anyone else, I wouldn't put it past them to say they don't get a card and then we'll just go to Micro Center and buy it, which is fine. But I would expect that card at $250 to be a complete shit show, to be honest. That's when I would say just go out and buy a freaking ARC 570. An ARC 570, I think, would be a far superior card. We'll make sure we include the ARC series. We haven't gone back and retested ARC. We need to, but I would fully expect the ARC 570 to be a more valuable and better performing card. And guess what? They're at the stores now. We finally see them on shelves again. That's what shocked the shit out of me when I was at Micro Center in Santa Clara. Was like, oh my God, look, ARC 500 series cards. Oh my God, the B570, there it is, the B580. Oh my God, these were, it's like the M&M's and Santa commercial. Oh my God, they do exist. So it's been a long time though, and I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten about ARC in the meantime because it was so unobtainium. All right, time to get on out of here, guys. Sound off what you feel about this. This is not the first time they've done this. This is the second time you're gonna see a stack this cluttered, right? Right now, if you're gonna compare it to AMD, AMD has four options. You got the 9060, 9060 XT, 9070, 9070 XT. That's it. And those cards I still think are extremely competitive and valuable with performance to dollar or dollar to performance, FPS to dollar, all the different calculations you wanna flip that around in versus any of the variants that NVIDIA has to offer at that price point. And it still holds true, believe it or not. I had this conversation with one of the BYO salesmen at Micro Center when I was in Santa Clara. They have a hard time keeping 50 or 9070 XT cards in stock. Like they'll get a big shipment and then they'll just dwindle out because they still are seeing 3 to 4 AMD cards walking out the store versus every one NVIDIA. When's the last time we heard that? It's been a long time, but that has been the case this time around. So this is why we still need AMD to please consider making a 9090 XT. That would be great to see it compete at the 5080 Super level, because guess what? The 9070 XT in many titles actually nudged the bottom of a 5080. It also costs as much, but still.